Please, let's all give a standing ovation. Coach Khan, welcome to Cindy Watson.
Well, good morning, everybody. Good morning. How many of you fabulous coaches are on a mission and want to change the world? That is nice to see. And how many of you want to get lots more clients to be able to do that? That is what I thought. Well, what if I told you that the key to getting all of those extra clients was actually in upping your negotiation skills? Does that resonate with anybody here? Yeah. Okay. Well, I want you guys to be able to sit back, relax, and just enjoy the ride here, because I'm going to be talking to you about one part of our program, which is how to become a more effective negotiator. This is something I feel so passionately about. And more specifically, the art of feminine negotiation, how to get what you want from the boardroom to the bedroom. Who's in for that? All right. The reason I think this is such an important skill is that all of life is a negotiation. Whether it's negotiating with your intimate partner, negotiating with your kids, negotiating with a boss or your employees, for you in this room, your sales teams, whether it's big corporate mergers and acquisitions, or for most of you in this room as well, negotiating with your clients. Or how about, more importantly, negotiating with your prospective clients? And perhaps the most difficult negotiation of all, negotiating with yourself. So let me take the temperature of the room here. How many people currently would consider yourself to already be a master negotiator? Okay, Kristen, you picked the right topic here. We've got no takers in the room. How about then at the other end of the spectrum, how many of you feel, if you're being honest with yourself, that you sort of shy away from negotiating a little bit? That maybe you don't like conflict, you don't like the idea of confrontation? Okay, well then let me give you a little gift right now, a little mindset shift that can be such an absolute game changer. I want to bust the myth that you have to bust balls to be a good negotiator. And I know that's totally not politically correct, but I want you to remember it, because that subtle mind shift will make a profound difference in your ability to negotiate effectively. And I'm not coming to you talking about this from up on my high horse or a place of judgment. Trust me, I have been there. I have busted many balls in my day. In fact, they called me the Barracuda in my law practice. And I built that reputation, and I'm a little embarrassed today to admit that I wore that like a badge of honor for a long time, until I didn't, until I realized that there was a pretty big price to pay for that, not the least of which is that it wasn't me at my most effective as a negotiator. And I think that came in part from growing up. I always felt I had a strong voice, and I was a natural, effective negotiator. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I was coming at those negotiations from a place of what I've now come to recognize or call authentic feminine power. But then I started the practice of law, and all of a sudden I'm this young 20-something woman coming into the type of law that I practice was labor law, so this was a male niche, male-dominated niche within a male industry, and I was often, for the longest time, the only woman in the room in so many of those negotiations and my hearings. And so I suddenly felt like it was the first time I'd sort of doubted my voice, and I felt like the way for me to be heard, the way for me to be taken seriously, the way for me to not be getting spoken over or, not having my ideas maybe taken from somebody else, was that I had to get a little scrappier. I had to bring that take no prisoners approach. That was going to be the sign of a good negotiator. That would be the thing that would make the difference. And I wasn't alone in that. How many people in this room believe that negotiation, toughness is what carries the day? How many people come with that preconception that toughness is what carries the day? The person who can stand their ground and not get budged off of it is the person who's going to get the best results. or the person who talks the loudest, or the person who keeps talking the longest, they're the ones who are going to get the win. Not true, not true, not true. And in fact, if you don't listen to anything else I say in this presentation, not that I am inviting that, just to be clear, but if you don't listen to anything else that I say, this simple mindset shift will make such a profound difference in up-leveling your negotiations. Because negotiation shouldn't be about winner and a loser. Negotiation shouldn't even be about what people always talk about as that win-win approach. And I hear really skilled mediators over and over again say, oh, I know I've done my job if everybody walks away a little unhappy. No, negotiation shouldn't be about people all walking away feeling that they got partially screwed over. The hallmark, if after 30 years I've learned anything, it's that the hallmark of a really effective negotiator is if I'm coming with this particular outcome in mind, and the other party's coming with this outcome in mind, and we're not both coming looking to put one over on the other side or get every last penny, which used to be my mindset, which is so many people's mindsets. But instead, if you come at those negotiations from a place of openness and creativity, you're able to then come up and think outside the box and come up with solutions that give better results for everybody, frankly. That is the hallmark of a really effective negotiator. So my first whisper, if you want to call it that, of this concept of the art of feminine negotiation, although I didn't think of it that way at the time, was when my daughter, our firstborn, got diagnosed with a serious heart defect and had to get rushed to the hospital as a young girl. And this is after having been told at her 1 week and 1 month and 2 month checkups, we were consistently told, I'm being paranoid, she's healthy as a horse. And I don't even know what made me want to get a second opinion. There was nothing dramatic with her health. She had a strange little cough, that was it. But they say the universe is perfect, and it certainly was for us, because of all the pediatricians I could have chosen, I happened to go to one who was a cardiac specialist, which I didn't even know at the time. And within minutes of being in his office, we were suddenly being whisked off to the hospital for sick kids. I'm calling my husband on the phone, you gotta meet me at the hospital for sick kids, I don't know what the hell is going on. And within minutes of getting to the hospital, where they already had a cardiologist waiting for us in emergency, suddenly my daughter's on oxygen and they're whisking her away for tests, and I'm thinking, what the hell is happening here? How did my life just get turned upside down and get this big so quickly? And then they came back from running a raft of tests, and they had 2 cardiologists sit us down. And of course, I've got my own successful law practice at this point, and so I'm coming with that masculine energy, you know, don't sugarcoat it, we can take it, give it to me straight, what are we dealing with here? And the cardiologist just looked at me and said, your daughter's in heart failure. She's got a really serious heart defect, and if she doesn't have open heart surgery immediately, she's not going to live. Have you ever had that feeling? I can best just describe it as a whoosh, where it feels like your inside suddenly got hollowed out, and somehow you feel hot, but also cold at the same time. That's what I felt in that moment. And then I was like, okay, I've changed my mind. Maybe you do want to put a little sugar back on that baby. And things just got worse over the next couple of days as we had to sit back while 2 different teams of cardiologists argued over which was going to be the most dangerous for our daughter, doing a single surgery or doing the surgery in 2. Because for Jade's condition, she got diagnosed with an AVSD. You have to cut the sternum open and operate from the front. For the coarctation, you have to come in from the back. And each team of cardiologists, some of the leading experts in the world, were equally convinced that the other side's approach would mean almost certain death for Jade. It does not exactly inspire confidence. And then it was like everything that could go wrong seemed to. If 99% of the population react this way to a particular drug or treatment, Jade was always that 1% over here that didn't react that way. And of course, at first we sat back and we just accepted their decisions. They're the experts. I'm no doctor. Hell, truth be told, I went to law school because I suck at math and science. So I'm here in this unfamiliar environment trusting them. Until the first few times when I'd sort of tentatively put up my hand or raised concerns or questions about their approach, and I got poo-pooed and told that it was impossible, and then it turned out that my instincts were right. Well, I started trusting my instincts. And as it says there, cue Mama Bear. Mama Bear showed up every day, life and death decisions. And after almost 3 months at the hospital for sick kids, we were at a bit of a crisis point. Jade was not responding. Things were not going well. And we got called in again for 2 different cardiologists this time. And if you take a look there, Jade is almost, as I say, she's been in the hospital almost 3 months now. And she is now just barely more than what she was at her birth weight. At 5 months old, none of those, when you're expecting those chubby cheeks and those big chubby legs, and poor Jade's back down to barely more than her birth weight. So they sat us down and said, we don't know what to tell you. We're at the end of the road. We don't know what else to do. We think we need to go back in and operate again. That's probably going to be our only hope. And I was like, no, look at that child. She cannot survive another surgery. We are not at the end of the road. There's a bunch of things we still need to try. And the one cardiologist looked at me, and you could see his frustration. He gave one of those, fine. If you're not going to let us operate, then we won't. But we don't believe she'll survive, and it will be on your head. Wrong thing to say to the wrong woman at the wrong time. And just on a little side tip for you on that, a negotiation, sometimes what you say in negotiations is not nearly as important as how you say it. Your body language, your facial expressions, your tone of voice. And this is certainly one of those situations, because I didn't even have to speak, and he knew he had overstepped, and he's trying to backpedal, so they call in the chief cardiologist, kind of patronizing me and patting me on the head, saying, Mom, I understand you don't think we've done everything that we should be doing, so what is it you think we should do? So I told him. I don't know if he was expecting, oh no, I didn't mean that. I told him in no uncertain terms. In fact, I had a list of things I wanted them to do. And he's like, if we do that and she doesn't respond, will you let us operate? I'm like, if you do that and she doesn't respond, I'll be begging you to operate, but I need to know that we're at the end of our rope. And I keep saying I should mention as well, my husband was incredibly supportive through this process. He trusted my instincts implicitly. And again, we're going to talk a little bit in a moment about the importance of that trust. But to their credit, I gave them the list of things I wanted them to do, and they did. And I'm happy to report that within a week, we were out of intensive care and up in the cardiac ward and on our way home. And they told us at the time that Jade would, thank you. And the journey wasn't over, though. They were very clear with us that Jade still had a defective heart, because it turned out in the surgery they discovered she also had a defective mitral valve, and they weren't able to fix it. They didn't have the technology to be able to replace an artificial microvalve at that size. The heart's the size of a walnut. So we were warned, you're going to at a minimum need surgery again at 2 months, at 2 years old, at 5 years old, and as a teenager. And she'll need to be on a raft of heart medications for the rest of her life. This is my daughter today, at 23 years old. She has never had to have another heart surgery, knock on wood. And we got her weaned off all medications very early. Now, I'm sure some of you are sitting there going, this is a really nice story, Cindy, and thanks for sharing, but I thought you said you were going to be teaching us about negotiation, and what the hell does this have to do with negotiation? Well, I chose this story intentionally because when we think of negotiation, everybody immediately goes to the big corporate deals, all about the big money deals, mergers and acquisitions. As I said at the beginning, one of the mindset shifts I want you to come away with here today in this brief time we have together is that all of life is a negotiation. Like I said, in every aspect, heck, negotiating your sex life is a negotiation. So I want you to start thinking in that mindset. And there is no question in my mind today, the thing that saved Jade's life was negotiation. Every day, for those almost 3 months we were there, hundreds of negotiations, every aspect of our exchanges were negotiating basically for Jade's life. But the thing that's interesting, and I wasn't conscious of this at the time, it was much later as I was coming up with the program and being unhappy in my practice of law and who I'd become, what I'd given up, that I suddenly realized, you know what? What you would have thought that in that situation under that stress, if there was ever a time I was going to really bring that masculine energy to the table, that would have been the time. But no, I didn't. I intuitively dropped right in. And while I was in that hospital, I was in Mama Bear mode. I was not coming from that place of masculine energy. I was pure feminine power. And let me just take a moment to say, when I talk for everybody in the room, when I talk about masculine and feminine, I'm not talking about gender. I'm not talking about women versus men. I'm not necessarily saying, geesh, women are going to be better negotiators than men. We all have masculine and feminine energy. And the problem is we've been taught to believe that success in negotiating means you have to bring that more masculine approach. And I firmly believe it's one of the problems with the world right now. We've all lost touch with that feminine energy, which ironically is more important. So what do I mean by that? I keep talking about this art of feminine negotiation, how to get what you want from the boardroom to the bedroom. What is that? Well, I obviously can't teach the whole program here in a half hour. I can't give you a year-long mastermind or even a 6-month or a mini coaching, but I do want to give you what I would call the foundation, the starting point for me that led to the development of the program. And I've created a simple mnemonic. It's RFIT. Just think, you are fit to be a great negotiator. And what does that stand for? AREFIT, assertiveness, rapport building, empathy, flexibility, intuition, and trust. So let's break those all down and see how they apply to my hospital experience. But I also, while I'm doing that, I want you to be thinking about in your own life where and how you can apply these principles to make your negotiations better. Whether it's a difficult conversation with your child, and whatever it is, building your teams, be thinking about how you can start applying these to make yourself more effective. So let's start with assertiveness. Was I assertive in that hospital? You bet your sweet patootie I was. But who did I first have to get assertive with? Anybody? Absolutely. The first and most important negotiation you're almost always going to have is with yourself. As I say, it would have been very easy for me to succumb to just pure raw emotion and hysterics or anger. I had to negotiate with myself to say, Cindy, just get focused. Concentrate on what is important here. This is the outcome, saving Jade, and be able to come from a grounded place. So I had to get assertive with myself. Once I got assertive with myself, and I want to be clear, assertive does not mean aggression. Too often, most people, I would venture to say, conflate assertiveness and aggression. They are not the same thing. Assertiveness comes from a place of confidence. And that confidence you can all develop. And again, there's whole portions of the program that talk about how to build confidence, but also specifically in the context of negotiations, it's building confidence through preparation. The more you prepare for negotiations, in fact, they say 45% of effective negotiations are in the preparation. And again, another big part of our program is what I call the 5 W's. As part of your preparation process, considering with intention the who, what, where, when, why. Again, we don't have time, obviously, to go over the whole 5 W's, but let me share just a little tidbit to show you what I mean by that, because most people don't bring this approach with intention to their negotiations. Let's pick why. It is so important for you to find your deep why when you're going into any negotiation, whether from the personal to the professional or all the spaces in between. Find that deep why. Do you think I had a deep why in that hospital when I was negotiating for Jade's life? You don't get much deeper of a why than that. So yes, I had this profound deep why. And I'd ask you guys when you're going into negotiation to dig deep to find your why. Even if, and especially if, when you're negotiating about money, people tend to ignore or forget about the why and think it doesn't matter. This is just a negotiation about money. The why doesn't matter. It is never just about the money. It's about what that money represents for people in that negotiation. Maybe for you it's status or needing to prove yourself to yourself or somebody else, whether dead or alive. You know, maybe that money is a program that your kid desperately needs. Maybe it's a romantic retreat that you need to save your relationship. Find your deeper why and bring that emotion to your negotiations. Let me be clear, I'm not saying be emotional. I'm saying bring that emotion to up level. You will be more persuasive and more influential if you can bring that emotion to your negotiations. Next, ask. We tend to not ask in life for what we want. You know, we assume in our relationships, if our partner really loved us, they'd know what we want. You know, in our work situation, if I do a really great job, I'm going to get recognized and get what I deserve. No, we need to ask. And I'll speak here, too, to the women in the crowd more so. Women tend to be much worse at this than men. 62% of men will ask for more money when they're given an initial job offer as compared to only 7% of women. So ask, ask, ask. For me in the hospital, something as simple, I recognized Jade needed some human contact. She had had 2 months of her life with devoted. She was an only child, effectively. She had 2 siblings after that, one of whom we got pregnant with in the hospital. I don't even know how that happened. I mean, I know how it happened, but I don't know how it happened there. But at that time, Jade had 2 months of unconditional love and physical contact, and suddenly, for the next 3 months of her life, I can only imagine a solid wall of pain. So I asked and insisted that they bring in a big-ass crib so I could literally crawl right in with her and have that human connection again, because I believed that was desperate to her wanting to fight to live. And if I'm being really honest, it wasn't just for her, it was for me. I needed to get back in touch with that maternal. I needed that connection. I needed that human touch. And then hold your ground. Once you've done all of these, the assertiveness is about holding your ground. I went toe-to-toe in a completely unfamiliar area with some of the leading cardiac specialists in the world. And again, though, I didn't do it from a place of aggression or threatening or bullying. I did it from rapport building. Okay? And Christian talked yesterday. There's an art to rapport building, frankly. And I'm not going to have the time to go through them here today, but if you want the best possible results, you need to build that rapport. And I certainly made, and it wasn't a conscious decision, it was intuitive for me, but now I'm asking you with intention to think about applying these skill sets. Because I made a point of getting rapport with those nurses, finding out, who was prepared to break the rules, who was best at this particular skill, who had the best relationship with the doctors. Same with the doctors, building that rapport with the doctors, building rapport with the administration. And I'll tell you one thing, they knew my name. They knew my face. You think that wasn't an advantage? I looked at all of the other parents in that hospital just wandering around in a dazed fog, not certain about, barely even getting the opportunity to talk to the doctor half the time. Empathy. Letting them know that I understand. Put yourself in their shoes, okay? I recognize that, there's been funding cuts, and for the nurses, I appreciate that you're not sometimes appreciated by the doctors, and for the doctors, letting them know I understand about the politics they're having to deal with. Bring that empathy to the table. Bring flexibility. Every day was volatile and fluid and changing, and we never knew what we were going to be dealing with at any given moment. So being able to stay flexible and open to the options and dealing with it was so important, as it is for you in your daily negotiations as well. But also being flexible in yourself about the outcome. Had I stayed really rigid about the outcome I needed or expected in any particular moment, I would have lost the opportunity for the solutions that ended up being game changers for us. Intuition, trusting, learning to trust in your intuition. And speaking of trust, it is so important to build trust with others. When you're in a negotiation, you need to build that trust. And again, tying back to my hospital experience, remember I talked about that cardiologist who had called us in and said that, hey, it'll be on your head? The day before we were leaving, he made a point, to his credit, of coming out of his department and up to track me down up in the cardiac ward when we were on our way out. And he said, looks like you turned out to be the better cardiologist of the two of us. And it wasn't one of these, like a screw you. It was as close as he could come to apologizing, and it was his way of showing me respect. I know you were protecting your daughter, and I respect that. I get that. It's important to trust yourself, and again, we talked about that. But I want to touch on an element in this, and that's part of that trust is going ahead in the face of your fear. And we all have fear. So much of my practice, so much of the art of feminine negotiation, the reason Christians spend so long on the inner work is because so much of all of this is first learning how to push past your limiting beliefs. A big part of our program is what I call no fear. So that stands for the F, no fear, E, no ego, A, no attachment, R, no reactivity. We're not going to go into that today, but I do want to spend a minute to talk about that fear. You think I didn't have fear going into some of those situations in the hospital? Fear shows up in all different ways. We have fear of failure, fear of success, fear of missing out, fear of losing, fear of the unknown. Absolutely, I had fear. When I gave that list, for example, of things I wanted them to do, I didn't know if I was making the right decision, asking them to take her off medications that may or may not be problematic, but the one that most sticks out in my mind in terms of going ahead in the face of the fear and trying not to show that fear and coming from a place of feminine power in those negotiations by controlling that fear was about her ventilator. You may have noticed in the picture that I showed you that Jade was on a breathing machine. And again, she was 2 months when she got to the hospital, and after 2 months being in the hospital, we reached the point where Jade had had an artificial machine breathing for her longer than she had been breathing naturally in her life. And the risk for every day after that is that the human body won't remember how to breathe anymore, especially at that young age. So I was adamant I wanted that ventilator taken out. But you think I wasn't scared when I stood there and they were ready to do it and they had somebody with the timer and then they had a team ready on standby to do an emergency intubation if it didn't work and she didn't breathe. And then they start that clock down and she's not breathing. And she's not breathing. And she's not breathing. And I am just willing her, come on, Jade, come on, baby, please just breathe. You are stronger than you know. You've got the strength. Take my strength if you need to. Please just breathe. And she is not breathing. And then they call time, and the team's ready to jump in to do an emergency intubation. I don't even know where it came from, but I'm like, no, give her 5 more seconds. And everybody's looking at each other in the chaos, and Dawn, my husband's looking at me wide-eyed, and the woman starts counting down again, 5. And I'm like, come on, Jade. 4, please, baby, breathe. 3, you've got the strength to do this. 2, take my strength if you need to. 1, and then... She took her first breath in almost 2.5 months, and we were able to get her off the ventilator. So, thank you. So, overcoming your fear is a really important skill set to be aware of. Face your fears, recognize what they are. And for those of you who may still be sitting here saying, what does this have to do with me? For God's sake, this is Coach Con. You're all coaches. So think about in coaching or sales, your sales team, which is a big part of growing that successful coaching business. And you're all entrepreneurs. All of those involve massive amounts of negotiation if you're going to be successful. So I encourage you to be looking at upping your negotiation skills so that you can get those clients. And think about your relationship. Coaching itself, that is a negotiation with your clients. Your relationship with your client is a constant negotiation, getting them to negotiate with themselves, negotiating your relationship, building that rapport, empathy, flexibility, intuition, and trust. And let's think about your sales for a moment as well in terms of in sales and for your sales teams as you're building your team. Think about the beauty of Christian's free sessions that sell. I saw almost the vast majority of the room put their hands up. The beauty of free sessions that sell is that Christian was obviously tapped into his feminine because the essence of that program is really the RFIT model. You are on those discovery session calls, those free sessions that sell, and you are building rapport, letting them know, I see your dream, I see your vision, I see that. Bringing that empathy. I put myself in your shoes. I share that vision for you. I see that vision for you. Having the flexibility as well as objections are coming up during your discovery session, being able to know how to do them, and then trusting your intuition to know which ones to hone in on, which is the most important aspect of it. And ultimately, always in that call, the entire free sessions that sell call your discovery sessions are about building that trust. And then, yes, you need that assertiveness. You bring the assertiveness into the call to stand for them when they're not strong enough yet to step into their own vision. That is the essence of what we do as coaches. That's the essence of what we do as effective entrepreneurs. So if you're sitting there saying, what does this have to do with me? I'd ask you to reframe and rethink this as well. Because what I want for all of you in this room is to become the most effective negotiators that you could be. I want you to be able to negotiate your intimate relationship to be the best that it can possibly be. I want you to be able to negotiate your relationship with your kids, to bring the best of you all the time and be the absolute best that you can be to get the best relationship. I want your businesses to grow monstrously and have you be the best coach with the best sales team, bringing rapport and empathy and flexibility and all of those feminine traits. Think about those 6 characteristics that I listed at the beginning. Assertiveness, rapport building, empathy, flexibility, intuition, and trust. The vast majority of those skills, would you consider those to be masculine or feminine traits? Feminine, absolutely. And yet we tend to shy away from bringing that to our negotiations. We've been duped into believing that negotiation is all about toughness and brawn. The power is in the power of feminine persuasion. Whether you are a man or a woman or however you identify in terms of gender, the power is in bringing those feminine traits. That is what will make you an effective negotiator. So, hopefully this has been of some help, and I trust that you are all on your way to getting what you want and deserve from the boardroom to the bedroom. And I want you to each turn to the person beside you and indulge me and just give them a high five and say, "You are fit to be a master negotiator." Nice. So if anybody wants as well, I've talked about some things, no fear bargaining, the 5 W's. Feel free to just go on my website. It's down there on the bottom. Free resources. Check out all of the blogs. We do weekly blogs on negotiation as well, so feel free to check those out. And I just thank you for your time, and go forth and get what you want in every aspect of your life, from the boardroom to the bedroom. So thank you. Thank you, Tasmin. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Right on time. Thanks.